Welcome into the Sportsmemo College Basketball Betting Podcast with Robbie, Veno, and myself, Drew Martin. Robbie, welcome into the podcast. How are you?
I am doing good today, Drew. Another Friday pod. Looking ahead to Saturday college hoops and maybe some AAF on this pod as well. But yeah, it's just another Friday. They seem to zip right by. Next Friday, we'll be talking about conference tournament action because for a handful of conferences in college hoops, tomorrow's the final day of the regular season. So we've hit that time of year now where we're going to be staring down these tournaments, and next thing you know, be right into Major League Baseball and the end of NBA season. And in this town, real quick, it's crazy. As you know, I'm a little bit outside Philadelphia, but the Bryce Harper signing yesterday, Drew, not to get off topic too much, but it has gone absolute bananas here. They sold 100,000 tickets yesterday in about 2 hours. Single game tickets for a Phillies game. So town's alive. Love their Sixers. Love their Phillies right now. Of course, the Eagles. And we got snow on the ground. It snowed 3 inches overnight. So that's about what's going on here in southeast Pennsylvania.
Well, stay warm up there, Robbie. Snow on the ground. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If you enjoy it, I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale, and I guess a plane just crashed into somewhere around Fort Lauderdale Beach. Just saw a headline, so hopefully everybody's okay with that down in South Florida. But yeah, stay safe out there if you're in the snow, Robbie.
Yeah, it's crazy. I would live for the warmer weather, Drew, but what are you going to do? You have to take what you're dealt here, so we handle it, no problem.
Yeah, and guys, check out Robbie's service. You know, he's going to have a bunch up for tomorrow's slate. We're going to be talking the Saturday slate of college basketball on today's podcast. So the look-ahead lines, we're going to go off of Ken Palm's numbers. Robbie Veno also does his power numbers, so being able to compare the two, where the lines will come out, and also which side looking to bet, totals-wise or side-wise. So hopefully grab some winners on tomorrow's card. Starting off towards the top of the card here, Robbie, a big one in the SEC, a rematch, 2 p.m. Eastern tip on CBS. Rotation number 635-636, Kentucky at Tennessee this time. Ken Palm showing Tennessee 73, Kentucky 71. So interesting numbers there. In my estimation, Kentucky will be coming out as the favorite, but who knows? I could be wrong. Total of that would put us at a total of 144 here, Robbie. How would you look to bet the Volunteers hosting the Wildcats?
Yeah, real quick, Drew, from a power ratings perspective, I think that a very slight home court number will come out in favor of Tennessee here. I show them -1.5, so pretty much in line with what Ken Palm has there at -2. It could get turned around quickly by money once the opener comes up in a few hours, but right now I'm showing Tennessee -1.5. And of course, it's a rematch from a game that wasn't played all that long ago, February the 16th. We had this first time around where Kentucky at home got the best of Tennessee in a big way. I don't even know, Drew, and chime in here if you agree or disagree, but in watching that game, 86-69 almost does Tennessee justice, that final score, because they were never really in this one. First half ended 37-31. Kentucky went on a big run, wind up winning by 17. They dominate on the glass, and it's going to be hard for Tennessee to reverse that trend here in this game. It's the same players and same fundamental capabilities, but Kentucky wins the rebounding war 38-24 in that particular contest, and Tennessee's going to have to change that. Head coach Barnes is going to have to do something to where Tennessee can close that number up a little bit. Shooting-wise, Kentucky shot the ball real well, 55% from the floor, and if they have a repeat performance in those two categories, rebounds and field goal percentage, going to be a long night for Tennessee, but I don't know that that'll happen. The crowd's going to be absolutely juiced. It's a different environment from Rupp this time around, and of course you can throw in the revenge factor a little bit. I think the problem I have with Tennessee, Drew, and it brought it up maybe when we first covered the initial Kentucky-Tennessee game, but they've been kind of on a descent down for at least, in my estimation, the better part of 3.5 weeks now. In other words, they've been playing below expectations. If they're 12-point favorites. They win by 3. And that stuff's been going on for a while here with Tennessee. So can they right the ship and get a big win here over Kentucky, the game that all eyeballs will be on this Saturday? It's very possible. But you have to have big games out of your veteran guys. And I think that point guard matchup, again, between Higgins and Bone is a real big deal here. We'll see if Williams and Schofield, the leaders of that Tennessee team, can bring it home. If I were to look to play right now, Drew, if you like Tennessee, let me put it this way. If you like Tennessee, I think I would wait. I have a feeling that there'll be Kentucky money here. I don't know that the revenge and the home floor is enough to sway bettors toward the Tennessee side right away. If you get a little bit of Kentucky money, you can jump in on Tennessee here. Either way, this game could go. But at 144, let's talk about the total here real quick too. 144, the first game hit 155. And that's another number I'm not sure of this time around. Tennessee defensively to give up 86 points this time, I just don't think that'll happen. Kentucky not generally a mid-80 scoring team, so perhaps a look toward this under 144. First time around, it wasn't much higher than that. I don't have the number in front of me, but I feel like this total was maybe 146, 145 and a half the first time. So there hasn't been a big adjustment. I just think that the game might be played a little differently this time, more of a defensive nature.
Yeah, no, you bring up some good points, Robbie. The revenge factor, I don't calculate that in. I mean, yeah, the home court, that matters, and I think it's factored into this line, both yours and Ken Palm's line as far as what the numbers should be. I just still think, Kentucky should be favored. They're the better team. Like you said, the rebounding, I don't see that changing a lot. Higgins, I'll take him any day at the point guard. And just Kentucky is a bet-on team for me, Robbie. I'm not looking to really fade them at all. And you bring up the fact of Tennessee kind of not falling apart, but their last 4 games, they're 2-2. The last 2 weeks, they really haven't looked that good, and you're just going to pick them off here at home against Kentucky to turn it around. I don't buy that. I don't like that profile. This is Kentucky or pass for me. So that's how I view this SEC one.
I would add one thing to that, Drew, just from a handicapping standpoint in favor of Kentucky here. That game against Arkansas a couple nights ago was a near miss for UK. And if there's anything that a coach loves more, it's to have a result like that where you're heavy favorite, you barely scrape by, and John Calipari can go in. A game like that preceding a huge matchup for conference supremacy, so to speak. And if there's anything head coach Cal would have loved, it would be that ending up in a victory and having it be a close call because he can coach these guys. I would expect them to be extremely focused for this one as well. It's a tough call here. There's obviously, in most handicaps, there's arguments for both sides. This one, I think the number would probably make the decision for most. But for me, I just feel like the total might be the better way to go here. Maybe a little bit of under 144 if that Ken Palm number is what we see for an opener.
All right, Robbie, let's move down the card a little bit. Still 2 p.m. slate here. Game number 639-640 in the Big 12. Iowa State at Texas. Ken Palm showing Texas a home court 71-70 victory. That would give us a total of 141. This one on ESPN2. Cyclones, Longhorns, Robbie, how do you view it?
Yeah, again, most of these games that we'll talk about here, Drew, conference-wise, have been played once already, so we have a little bit of history. We see the fundamental matchup between the two the first time around. It's a little bit of a gauge here for us. I think let's start with the Texas side here first, though, because what they've done the last 2 games without their lead guard, Kerwin Roach, really has surprised me. They played much better than I expected without him on the floor. Now, is that sustainable? In my mind, my personal opinion is it's not sustainable. I don't know that they can go a long string of games, and he's out indefinitely. I mean, there's no indication that Kerwin Roach is coming back anytime soon. So for Texas, you wonder if that subtraction, not just from the starting unit, not just from being the top playmaker on the team, not from just being the leading scorer on the team, But in addition, from a rotation standpoint, when the rotation gets slimmed down by a player of that caliber at this time of year, all right, you did it once, okay. You got there twice. Shaka Smart's a real good motivational coach, and he can get his guys up. But there comes a time where, that absence shows up. And against Iowa State here, it just might. And the line, as you indicated just now, according to Ken Palm, would be Texas -1 in this game. I happen to agree with that. My power ratings show the same thing, and it could be a good spot to take advantage of Iowa State in this particular matchup. First time around, they win it 65-60, and Roach was a big part of that game. He led Texas with 19 points. Obviously, leading shot taker, makes all his free throws. So that production, to me, even though Texas is at home, will be missed by them in this game against an Iowa State team which in their own right was fired up on Monday night against Oklahoma. Remember, they were off back-to-back losses, took on OU, and I think they were laying 9 in that game. They wind up winning and really stretching out the lead late. That game was tight for a long time, and then Iowa State at home opened it up, wind up winning by 17. They've been a streaky team this year, so where Iowa State's concerned, I'd prefer to ride with whatever situation they're in. Right now, I would say that's a confidence-building win for them. A lot of the articles I had read up to that game, preceding the Oklahoma game, had guys just kind of scratching their heads and seeking a game where they could reestablish themselves as what a lot of people, including myself, thought would be the best team in the Big 12 once they were totally healthy. Good game on Monday night. I think they can, they've got the backcourt ability to make Texas pay for not having Roach here. Like I say, first game was real close, but that was with the 19 points from Kerr and Roach. I don't think that happens this time. If Texas comes favored, I'm pretty sure I'd be on the Iowa State side plus the 1.
And how do you look to bet Texas overall without Roach, Robbie? I mean, do you think they slow the pace and look unders, or it somehow could this possibly help them overs, or just straight fade on the Longhorns?
The first half of the Oklahoma game, which is the first game that Roach was out, that first half was extremely high scoring. Then the second half went right in the tank, and it winds up 69-67. Pretty low possession game. It's hard to gauge the Baylor game because it went overtime, but it was still played at a pace closer to 70 than it was to mid-60s. So Texas still kind of in between. My opinion is Shaka Smart had a fairly methodical team to begin with, tempo-wise. So when you take the lead guard out, you would think that would either remain or get slower. For me, I just think no matter what tempo they play, I think they're going to end up missing the point production that Roach was giving them and the leadership that he was giving them, especially if you're talking about a game here, Drew, where we have it projected as a 1-point ball game, one team favored by 1. Then last-second shot stuff comes into play, late free throw shooting comes into play, and Roach was everything for them in those instances, the playmaking ability to get it to the big. So, like I say, once or twice, okay, the Oklahoma game, okay, the Baylor game, okay. Iowa State's a step up in class here for them over those two teams, and I think that it might start to show here. We'll see. Like I say, Smart's a really good coach, and he gets his guys to play, but I just think they're a little too short-handed, and I would look toward Iowa State.
Okay, great breakdown there, Robbie. Thanks for explaining that, because Texas is a team I really haven't been involved with too much this season. I obviously aware of the Roach injury, but I don't know too much about him as a player as far as his defensive abilities. Are they going to miss a lot on that side of the floor? Do you know?
Yeah, they will, because Smart, unlike the way he used to coach at VCU, which was that havoc defense, they're not that 94-foot team. But in the half court, your point guard is you always bring up Higgins. And rightfully so, because his half-court defense on the ball is extremely impressive, and it slows other teams down. And with Roach, you kind of lose that. So it's, for me, his loss is more on the offensive end, but you can't ignore what he does on the defensive end, and you can't ignore what he does on the free throw line and assist-wise. for that team. So there's a lot of categories there, Drew. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
With him. And they've, like I say, they've exceeded expectations where I was concerned. I expected them to take a nosedive. They didn't. Is it a product of Oklahoma and Baylor? I know we've talked about Baylor a little bit on the show, and in talking to you, you're of the opinion that Baylor, they're middle of the road Big 12. Oklahoma, I would say, they're middle of the road Big 12 as well. So maybe the step up is when they finally miss their leader. It's hard for me to believe that they're going to go from here through Texas Tech, their next game, TCU, and then into the Big 12 tournament and just continue to play extremely well without him on the floor.
Guys, check out Robbie Veno on Sportsmemo.com. He's got his CBB 5% hitting it over a 70% clip. Granted, it's just 5-2. He's very selective so far this year. He'll likely have one tomorrow. 5% top play up at Sportsmemo.com. And remember the coupon code CBB100. That's CBB100 at checkout for Robbie Veno or myself, Drew Martin, rest of the college basketball season for $100 off. That will get you all the way through the Final Four national championship game for just $325. No extra charges later. That coupon code is CBB100 at checkout. Robbie, moving down the card here, we got 687, 688, 4 p.m. Eastern tip on ESPN, heading to the AAC. UCF, the Knights, traveling to Houston to take on the Cougars. 62 for the Knights, 70 for Houston. That's how Ken Palm puts it, a 132 total. I believe Houston, Robbie, as far as record-wise, I could be wrong. I believe they have the best record in the country, 27-1. Possibly top 10 team, definitely top 20 team in my opinion. But UCF coming in, strong team themselves. I believe you'd put them on the bubble, Robbie. They still got something to play for, I believe. So how would you look to bet this AAC matchup?
Yeah, and it's, we're going to talk about this game, Drew, because it's not often in the AAC that Houston has the potential to get pushed by an opponent. But this particular opponent, UCF, played them close the first time around. Granted, the game was at home. 77-68 Houston victory in that one. I think the biggest thing that you take away from that game is that Central Florida's third-year starting center, Taco Fall, only gives them 19 minutes in that contest. There was some foul trouble. When you only get 19 out of 40 out of the big guy, then there's going to be a little bit of trouble for Central Florida, certainly on the defensive end where he's maybe the best rim protector in the nation right now. So if he can stay on the floor here, that's a plus for Central Florida for sure. I think when we start to talk about Houston, one thing's obvious to everybody. Kelvin Sampson's team plays intense defense, 40 minutes. They seem to have no let-up, Drew, when I watch them. That group plays as hard. And you would think with a 30-plus game college basketball schedule that there'd be an instance where you let up, but they just don't let up. The defense is relentless. But on the offensive side of the floor, I think it just starts with trying to eliminate the three-point shooters on that team, because when they get it going from three-point range, and ask East Carolina. East Carolina is a team that in the last 2 years hasn't figured out how to stop Houston from shooting threes. Houston racks up, I think, over 90 twice and over 100 once against East Carolina in the last 3 meetings. But if you can slow these guards down a little bit, Corey Davis, Armani Brooks, these guys who shoot the three so well, 40% three-point shooters, then you have yourself a chance. Because Central Florida can match them defensively, and Central Florida has guys that can put it in the bucket themselves. B.J. Taylor has been there as long as Taco Fall has been there. B.J. Taylor, the point guard for this team, extremely good offensive basketball player. And Coach's son, Johnny Dawkins' son, Aubrey Dawkins, has been real good as well. So they've got multiple weapons, but they have to be able to contest the three. They have to be able to stop the three. First time around, they did it. Houston only goes 7 for 27 from the three-point line. But again, the absence of Taco Fall in that one led to a lot of easier points in that game. Houston got to the free throw line quite a bit. And Central Florida, go through their box score in that game, 14 of 27 from the free throw line was UCF. You leave 13 points on the table. Not that you're supposed to make every free throw, but let's give UCF, an extra 5 free throws, and you have a 4-point game. So they need to do something from the line. They need to keep Fall on the floor. I think, to tell you the truth, that they can be very competitive here. The question is going to be for Central Florida. As I view them as a much better home team than road team. It's a 21-6 ball club, so they're a good club. But their performances at home, especially on the offensive end, to me, seem to be better than they are on the road. So they're going to have to find a way to do a few things here. But if you get enough points, they might be a live dog. And like I say, Houston just hasn't been pushed very much by anybody. It happens on very rare occasions, and maybe Saturday will be one of those.
Robbie, we got another game here. Mid-majors of sort. What one do you consider, UCF Houston or Nevada, Utah as mid-majors, or how do you classify those type of teams?
They're teams that could play in a power conference, Drew, but when you break down their conference overall, they just have to be considered mid-majors, right? Because these are teams that play half a dozen or more squads that are no better than mid-majors. So when we look at Houston and that AAC, which is getting better, when we look at the Mountain West, which just has, again, a half dozen or more adequate teams, and then we're going to get to the West Coast Conference where Gonzaga sits. And yeah, these are all teams that would be great. You'd love to see Nevada, Gonzaga, Utah State, St. Mary's. Any one of those 4 teams would probably win the Pac-12 this year. But they're in Western conferences that just have a lot lesser talent. So I consider them mid-majors for sure, even though they could play in major conferences.
Well, we got an 8:30 tip Eastern time, 5:30 Pacific, CBS Sports Network, Nevada at Utah State. This is a closer point projection than I thought, 72-71. Actually favoring Utah State over Nevada, 143 the total according to Ken Palm. Are you as surprised as I am in these numbers, Robbie?
Actually, no. Utah State has been on an absolute tear as of late. I made the game Nevada minus a half a point, so right near Pick'em, which, he's on the other side of that with the Utah State side, but we're in the same vicinity. But no, I'm not really surprised at the closeness of it when you factor in, again, home floor is going to be a big thing here in Logan, Utah. Utah State's been, like I say, on a tear, and it's been a long time since they played the first game in this 2-game series, Drew. This one was played way back on January 2nd when Nevada was rolling extremely strong at that point, and Utah State went into Reno and came out of the Lawler Center 23-point losers. Probably didn't know what hit them at the time. The Nevada side, as we continue through the college basketball season and get to see more national coverage, they've got the bigger names, right? Everybody knows by now the Martin twins, Cody and Caleb. Everybody knows Jordan Caroline. Fun fact, Simeon Rice's son, Simeon Rice, started defensive end at Illinois and then in the NFL for a lot of years. But people don't really know Utah State. When you turn the TV on Saturday to watch this game, which is a real important game in the Mountain West Conference, you'll get to see a kid named Sam Merrill, who's the offensive leader for Utah State. But they've got other guys on that team. Brock Miller's a very good shooter, and Queta underneath, a very good rim protector. So they match up pretty well. I would say this. Nevada's got far more big game experience, having done what they did in the tournament last year. That always helps, especially when you have to go on the road. But for me, in calculating power ratings and updating power ratings after each and every game over the course of the last 10 days or so, Nevada has sunk a couple of points. Whether or not it's that time of season where you've played 20-some-odd games and you're a little bit tired. Remember, the Wolfpack doesn't have a deep rotation, Drew. Eric Musselman doesn't go that deep into his bench. There are about 7 guys that play all the minutes. And at this time of year, when you're favored by, double digits every single game, it can play a little bit of a mental game with you, and you don't focus all the time. So part of that comes into play. It won't happen here. They'll be focused. Utah State will be focused. That particular gym will be crazy on Saturday night. And Utah State has the components. I think this. Number one, Utah State won't score 49 points again. You can mark that down. As great as Nevada is defensively, they're comparable to what I just said about Houston. Nevada can play lockdown defense. Utah State won't be held to 49 points. They won't be held to 16 of 61 from the floor or 4 of 23 from three. That's just not going to happen. So they're going to increase their scoring. Nevada didn't have a great offensive night either in that particular contest, scoring 72. So I'll be interested to see where this total comes. KenPom projects it to be about 143, which to me seems right on the nose. I don't know that I could play it either way. I'm kind of looking for a number specifically to make a wager here, but I think that Utah State does have the ability. I don't know that they'll get it done. It wouldn't surprise me if they get it done watching them this year. They're an explosive offensive team, and if they get on, let's say they go on a 12-0 run or something like that and get the crowd fired up second half, it'll be a tough road to come back for Nevada, although last year in the NCAA tournament they had plenty of experience in come-from-behind games where they won a few, and in the end that game against Loyola of Chicago, they fell just a shade short in a comeback mode. So they're no stranger to that particular situation. Great game, Drew. The only reason we're talking about it here on the air today is because we don't generally talk about the Mountain West. There's no matchups to talk about in this league. This is one where you could turn on the TV and find two real good teams. For Utah State, let's put it this way. It's going to be real hard to make it as an at-large into the NCAA tournament. Nevada's in as an at-large, so there's more at stake for the Utah State side in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Nevada will make it as an at-large. And do you think Utah State, if they win out and then maybe lose in the Mountain West championship game, they're still out?
I think it would depend on how close that Mountain West championship result is. I mean, if it's a 2-point game, 3-point game, then I think they'd be under heavy consideration as an at-large. Drew, they would have to be. I'll tell you right now, power ratings, they rank right with, if not better than, a lot of the teams that are being considered for last four in, last four out, that type of thing. Me personally, I would put Utah State in ahead of a bunch of those teams. So a win here will go a long way for Utah State. We'll see if they can get it or not.
All right, Robbie, let's do one more game here, guys. And remember the coupon code CBB100 at checkout for the rest of the college basketball season for $100 off. We got last game up, Degenerate Special Get Back game on ESPN, 10 p.m. Eastern tip, 7 p.m. Pacific. Gonzaga at St. Mary's. Gonzaga, 8-point favorites on the road, 79-71. According to KenPom, I shouldn't say 8-point favorites. That's just the projection by KenPom's numbers. 150 the total, Robbie. Have at it on this nightcap.
Yeah, I projected to be a little higher, Drew. I show Gonzaga 10 points over St. Mary's. First time around, 94-46. Are you kidding me? They scored more than double what St. Mary's scored in that game. And St. Mary's, just to put it into perspective for you, power rating-wise, the same as the Utah State team I just talked about in the prior analysis. So they're not a joke of a team. It's not Randy Bennett's vintage squad, but certainly they've had a good year, and they've blown a lot of people out. But, boy, when they played Gonzaga at home in Moraga the first time around, they got absolutely whipped. And I, for one, don't see anything changing. We saw Gonzaga last night, Drew, basically in the first half of that game, go through the motions, 39-20 half, and then when it had to be done, they absolutely blew Pacific out of the water and wind up winning that game comfortably by 20 points. They might have been in look-ahead mode to this game. The first time around the game was played in Gonzaga. I said Moraga the first time, St. Mary's home floor. This is going to be on St. Mary's home floor this time. I don't think any of what happened the first time changes. Gonzaga, for those who have seen them play, they'll beat you any of 100 ways. They can beat you solely on defense in a low-scoring game if you want to turn the game into a crawl session and play half-court offense the entire time and think that you can milk the shot clock and maybe stay close. they'll crush you that way because they're better on the boards, they're better defensively, they have shot blocking ability. And then if you want to get into a fast-paced game, they'll absolutely annihilate you because they're one of the best open floor teams in the country. You could argue they're one of the top 3 open floor teams in the country. St. Mary's just doesn't have enough weapons whatsoever to compete with this team, which is so deep as well. First time around, just to give you some quick numbers here, St. Mary's goes 15 of 58 from the floor, 26%, 1 of 13 from three-point range. Now that is your key factor anytime that St. Mary's plays Gonzaga, because St. Mary's is so dependent upon the 3 to do their scoring. They're an efficient offensive team under Coach Bennett. They like to be methodical. But who the heck wants to work against the Gonzaga half-court defense? I don't think anybody wants to try to go to work against Gonzaga's half-court defense. So they have to, in my estimation, find ways to get open floor points, get rebounds, and when the opportunity presents itself, run and get a cheap layup. But St. Mary's isn't wired that way. Gonzaga does not give up a lot of rebounds. They're a tremendous offensive rebounding team. So it's real hard for St. Mary's fundamentally, Drew, for me to make a case where they could tighten things up. I mean, sure, they could lose by less than 48, don't get me wrong, but I mean to make this a game within point spread consideration. 8 points projected by Ken Palm, 10 by myself. Gonzaga comes focused. I just don't even see that happening or coming close to happening. It's a real contrast in styles. Gonzaga is the top tempo team in this league. St. Mary's is the lowest, slowest tempo team in this league. Anything St. Mary's can do, Gonzaga's got an answer for. A lot of the things Gonzaga does, St. Mary's has no answer for. So, again, it's a good team, and it's the second best team in the league, and they've destroyed opponents other than Gonzaga in this league, but they're thoroughly outclassed in my estimation. Home floor is not enough, and we'll look maybe at the total here too, because even though they won't get held to 46, I don't know that St. Mary's can get to 60 against this team, in all honesty, Drew. So we'll see how it goes, but I think Gonzaga minus the points will probably be the right way.
Robbie, great stuff as always, guys. Check out Robbie Veno's 5% plays up at sportsmemo.com. He's doing very well in those. Also the 4 and 5 percenters, 45 and 33 run. That's 58% on best bets. So full card tomorrow, guys. Look out early tomorrow morning for a bunch of plays coming up on the website. And remember the coupon code CBB100 at checkout for $100 off rest of the college basketball season. March is here. It's March 1st today. Tomorrow, Saturday slate is March 2nd. So March Madness of sorts is here. Best of luck out there, guys. Have a fun, safe weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday.